Sports YouTube Network, Derek Gunn, Rob Ellis. We are joined by our next guest who played for the Eagles from 1986 through 93. He is a Super Bowl champion. He is a two-time second-team All-Pro, 91 and 92, three-time Pro Bowler. He's on the Philadelphia Eagles 75th anniversary team and their Hall of Fame, and should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The one and only Seth Joyner. Seth, what's going on, my man? How you doing?
What's happening, gents?
Seth, all good. Always a good day when we get to talk to you, my man.
Absolutely. Hey, Seth, I got to ask you. I know we're going to talk Eagles, but I got to ask you this because this has been brought up a number of times, and I'm on board with this. And I've told you this to your face many times. Does it bother you that you haven't been given your just due in the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
No, it can't bother you. I think, when it comes to the Hall of Fame, my contention has always been that, you have outside sources that are validating your worth, whether you deserve to be there or not. That's always a tricky thing when you have objective minds, that say this guy is worthy, this guy isn't, that guy isn't, So, I was on with Dan Sileo a couple of days ago, and I told him, I'll tell you guys the same exact thing. I didn't fall in love with football for any accolades at all. To be honest with you, I really didn't know a whole lot about the Hall of Fame, when I first became a professional, athlete. It wasn't something that was on my radar. And I never played to be, a Hall of Famer. I never played. I just played because I loved the game, and I played the game, to maximize my talents and my ability and to live my dream of being, a professional football player.
Okay. Just to stay on that for 1 second, Seth, and I'm going to exclude Reggie White because I'm going to assume that would be your answer. If I'm presumptuous, you tell me, but take Reggie out of it. Most dominant player that you played with.
Oh, wow. That I played with. I'd probably just have to go down the line and go to Jerome.
That's why I see the jersey over your shoulder and
I just think that, if we don't lose him, he's a Hall of Famer. He's already in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was that good. I don't think people really, cherished or understood how good he actually was, because, even in today's game, and this is why, I like Jalen Carter so much. At the defensive tackle position, 9 times out of 10, you're either a run stopper or a pass rusher. Mm-hmm. It's very rare that you find guys like Aaron Donald, Jerome Brown, Warren Sapp, guys like that can do it all. It's very rare. And, Jerome was at the forefront of that. Even before then, I'm trying to think about guys who played before our era, maybe a Howie Long. Guys playing during our era, maybe a John Randall. I'm pulling these names out because, I've had, this conversation before. Mm-hmm. But if you really stop and think about it, the full boat, the generational defensive tackle, how often do, you see that guy? And, at that time, it was very unusual. He was just that dominant, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I figured as much. I any kind of Jerome stories I can get, I love. So let's talk. You brought up Jalen Carter, and I know we talked draft night, and we were all pleasantly surprised that he fell to where he fell. Do you expect him to not skip a beat, Seth, and be that guy right away, right out of the chute, or is it going to take somebody like that a little while to get adapted to the pro game?
Well, I think that every player, young player who comes into the National Football League has to grow into the role of being a National Football League player opposed to an NCAA player. That's a natural deal. But I think that these players today are better and more equipped to make that transition than they were in my day. Some people will say it's the money. I will say that I believe that, today's athletes are a little more groomed, prepared, physically. The college game translates in a lot of ways to the pro game, the way that it's played nowadays. But the fact that, training is different and nutrition is different, and all of these things play a role in how quickly guys can make that transition. I think there'll be a little bit of a learning curve. And I think, if they've got enough depth at the position, you don't have to really rely on him right out the gate. I think that Milton Williams, should be the lead guy, and Milton Williams should be the guy that's the starter. But it wouldn't shock me one bit, to see them throw him right in the fray, after watching him, play a couple of preseason games, because I think he's that good.
Hey, Seth, I look at the influence that Georgia now has on this Eagles defense. And Jordan Davis in particular, he played 26% of the snaps last year, primarily because he had two different sets of injuries that cost him valuable playing time. All right. When you're drafted that high, he's got the 1 year under his belt now, even though it was a limited role. How much more does he have to play to satisfy you in terms of getting a high draft pick on the field to truly showcase what he can or cannot do?
Well, I think the dynamics have changed, from a playing percentage standpoint. I don't think Fletcher Cox plays any more than 50-55% of the plays.
Right.
I wouldn't expect Jordan Davis, unless you get him down to, 320 pounds, and, you get him in, tip-top shape, and he has his pro body. I wouldn't expect for him to play, any more than 50% of the plays, just because of, his weight. But, they need a lot more production out of him being drafted, and moving up to where they had to move up to get him. That to me is a major issue. I mean, I think you saw where Howie said in the past, last year when they were talking in the war room, he got some intel from, some of his scouts that, he doesn't rush the passer. He can't rush the passer. And Howard's response was, well, why? They didn't ask him to do that at Georgia at 355 pounds. That's a lot harder to do. So, therein lies your answer. But I think, it's a misstep at 13 to take him if he can't evolve into a pass rushing defensive tackle. He can't, you couldn't move up to 13 and trade what you trade to go up and get him for him just to be a first and second down player. Or the guy that fits into your 50 front, when you're struggling to stop the run on first and second down in your 40 front. So, we'll see. We'll see. I think that, this rotation thing that these teams are doing now, I think that they feel like, I think the sports science and all that kind of stuff says that, when guys get over a certain percentage of plays and so on and so forth, that the analytics say that the probability of injury goes up. I think all of these factors, factor into, how much a player actually plays, which is like insane to me, because offensive linemen play every damn play.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, we act like they're not doing anything out there. Those guys said, let's go right into your wheelhouse, man. Nakobe Dean at the middle linebacker spot. We didn't see him. We saw him special teams. We didn't see him much as a player. The Eagles had, guys in front of him. He said he said he wanted to play last year. He understood, but he's ready to roll. What are your thoughts? How good do you think he can be? And are you trusting in that?
Well, I was impressed by the little bit of playing time that he got. The one thing the kid does is he's around the football. He makes plays. I don't think the passing game is going to be so much of a struggle or an issue for him, so much more than the running game is going to be, especially in their 40 front. The Eagles struggled to stop the run last year when teams really wanted to run the football. I think they ranked like 18th, 19th, somewhere along there. Most people say, but that's middle of the road. But, the same issues that plagued them and we talked about last year, as good as they were on defense, is the same things that cost them, the Super Bowl, because in my opinion, Kansas City came out with a mindset to stop to run the football in the second half.
Right.
And that spurred their offense, on to being able to do what we witnessed them doing, scoring 4 to 6 times in the second half. I don't care. You can talk about 70 sacks all you want, but if you can't get down to holding teams, if you're not a top 5 team, in my opinion, versus the run, you're going to experience some problems, because if teams can start running the ball, then that's going to open up their play action passing in their passing game the way that it did in the Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes. Andy Reid was masterful at creating that. So I think that one of the things that, that I'm really looking for to see from Nakobe Dean is how he fits, in the run defense, particularly in the 4-man front, because you can hide him in the 5-man front. There's things that you can do. You can give him one gap when you got 5 guys across the board. One gap to flow play to you. You're responsible for one gap. Play away. You're flowing to the ball. You have no gap responsibility. That's easy. But when you get into your 4-man front, you always have 2 gap responsibility. You've got a gap on the play side and you've got a gap on play away before you can actually flow to the ball, going outside. So for me, that's going to be the thing that I'm going to be watching the most, is how he handles the run. And I think one of the reasons why, the Eagles have struggled so much against the run is because they don't have great playmaking linebackers. And you can talk about TJ Edwards and all his ability to get guys lined up. That's great. You got to have a guy that can do that. You can talk about, the 130, 40 tackles last year. That's great. But do you have playmakers there? Do you have guys that can fill gaps and fill holes and know where they're supposed to fit? And I would tell you that, a lot of TJ Edwards tackles were tackles down the field after 4 or 5 yards, in the running game. You got to be able to build a wall at the line of scrimmage and be able to stop people for 1-2 yard gains, no yard or minus tackle for a loss. And you just didn't see a lot of that from the linebackers last year.
Seth, this team was able to bring back the likes of Bradbury, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, which surprised us in a lot of ways. They lost the top 5 tacklers on defense. So when you take into consideration, they brought back some of the old guard, you have an influx of new young kids coming in, and you have a new defensive coordinator plus a multitude of coaches on the defensive side of the football. How long do you think, especially with the limited amount of practices, they're not even having a mandatory camp now. So it's OTAs, training camp, game. How long do you think it'll take before it meshes, the coaches understanding how to use their personnel and the personnel understanding their role within the structure of Sean Desai and Matt Patricia's defensive scheme?
Well, Degon, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was just talking about this the other day. A lot is going to have to do with how much of the terminology, how much of the scheme from Jonathan Gannon and what he used, being a guy, being a Vic Fangio guy, how much of that can be applied, picked up, deciphered, and digested early. Because, you go back to last year, none of the starters played in the preseason. The team got off to a good start because, they pretty much had some cream puffs at the beginning of the year. But it took a little bit of time for the defensive side of the ball to find its bearings and to, kind of figure out what their identity was going to be. They don't have such luck this year in the scheduling, and they got a target on their back, having just gone to the Super Bowl, and dominated the National Football Conference. So it's tough. It's tough. I know that, coaches have their own coach speak, their own verbiage, their own, way of doing things.
Yep.
And a lot will depend on how quickly they evolve in the preseason, how quickly they evolve in training camp. Because like you said, they just don't have the time that's necessary, to be able to grow as a unit. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that was made in the collective bargaining agreement is there's always, going overboard. I understand why they wanted to, you know, take away from the coaches the ability to say when a guy involuntary, voluntary, you know, off season.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were coaches out there that were taking advantage of it and pushing guys too hard, too much, requiring that they be there. If they weren't there, you know, they probably weren't going to be on the roster later on. Then you have to look at the other side. It's detrimental to the young guys because that means the young guys can't be around their coaches to actually learn what it is that they need to learn. You know, if Jalen Hurts wants to come in and work with his quarterback coach, even if he wants to, he's not allowed to. Mm-hmm. To me, that's nonsensical. You know, if players want to get better and the coaches are part of what can help make them get better, just as long as they're there because they want to be there, then what's the issue? You know, they always go overboard every single time that they fix something. There's this overstepping reach, you know, that you see. I know for me, the most critical time in my career was that first offseason. I mean, I was there at the facility from the end of February through June, and every coverage, we just went through everything. We watched film, we lift weights, we did field work, we did everything, anything that you can imagine. And that's what, you know, helped my growth really take off in year 2 and year 3, was because all of those fundamental things, you know, we had time to work on. I didn't have to go find someone off campus to work with. I didn't have to, you know, work on it on my own. I had the coach's eyes looking at what I was doing and telling me what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong so I could make the corrections, you know, and ingrain it.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. Is there anything on that side of the ball other than what we discussed, but be it safety or anywhere else that you're concerned with, Seth, as we go into this season?
I'm concerned with safety because you know they're unproven. The 2 areas where I'm concerned on the defensive side of the ball is the linebackers, obviously, and I'm concerned at safety. Now they've got enough at both positions, I think, to create all the competition that one would need, and I love competition. It's one thing that Nick Sirianni is big on. I think you're going to have massive competition at the running back position. I think you're going to have massive competition at the linebacker position, and I think at the safety position. And the cream should rise to the top, and you should find the top guys at those positions, you know, that are going to get the lion's share of the playing time. But until I can see what that looks like, it remains, and it's going to remain a concern for me.
Seth, last question for me, because I know you got to get going, but I do believe this Eagles team is deep enough and good enough to win the division again and break that jinx of not having a team in the NFC East win the division back-to-back. But do you think when you look at the schedule, they're good enough to win 14 games again?
Well, that little murderer's row stretch of 5 games after the bye week, you know, that's concerning. So if they can get to that point and still be healthy or just be recovering from any kind of injuries that they potentially could have, then I say, yeah. I think that they have the ability, they have the potential, they have everything you need to win 14 plus games again.
Okay.
For me, the question is going to be, it always comes down to injuries. Right. Because if you lose a guy like Jalen Hurts for like 5 games, if you lose a A.J. Brown, if you lose a Dallas Goedert, if you lose a Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, if you lose one of those guys or 2 of those guys for an extended period of time, then you're going to have some issues because now you're asking the guys that back them up to come in and be who they are, and they're just not. There's a reason why guys are backups and guys are starters. But they have all the talent in the world, especially on the offensive side of the ball. What has changed on the offensive side of the ball? I mean, they were one of the most prolific offenses, you know, in the National Football League last year. Number 2, by the time they got to the Super Bowl, they were tied with Kansas City for number 1 in offensive production last year. So there's no change over there other than the fact that, you know, we got to figure out who the right guard is going to be and whether you can overcome, you know, any kind of knick-knack injuries that might, you know, keep this team, that side of the ball from doing what they're doing. And someone, JM, just chimed in the running back room. Yeah, well, I mean, you got enough there that's going between Gainwell, who came on at the end of the year, DeAndre Swift, and Penny, and then you got the giant killer. There's going to be so much competition there that you're going to get the best of the best out of that position.
Yep.
I love Seth's a great guest because he also reads the chats. It's perfect, man. Seth multitasks while he's the guest on the show. He is a veteran, man.
You know what it comes from? It comes from doing my own podcast by myself, which, by the way, I'm going to start back up this year.
Nice.
Doing my own podcast myself, not having a producer behind the scenes to feed me questions, but I'm reading the questions as I'm doing the show live, you know, and picking and choosing which one I'm actually going to put up to answer. So I've learned how to multitask. Man.
I hear you. Well, listen, we appreciate you squeezing us in. I know you got a lot going on, Seth. We're looking forward to talking to you down the line, man. We're getting closer. Not that far away. It's almost June, my man. I appreciate it.
Anytime, man. I apologize for, you know, only being able to give you guys 25 minutes, man. But we'll do it again. Let me know.
Absolutely. Take care, bro.
Appreciate it, man. Take care. Have a good day. All right, take care. That is Seth Joyner. Always insightful, Gunner. Always bringing. He is right. Like he brings up the some of the collective bargaining stuff, you know, with the players. Like if Jalen Hurts says, "Man, I really want to work with Brian Johnson today. I know it's April, but I want to get some work in on certain things." Yeah, as long as guys like I get it, where coaches and organizations could pressure a guy into doing things they maybe don't want to, right? But that to me seems a little bit, you know, if you're, I don't know how you do it, how you would regulate it, but it feels like they should be able to do that if they want to. It could just help these guys get better.
Well, see, Seth brought up a valuable point. The teams abused the privilege for so long.
Yeah.
That players were like just worn down by the time you went from off season to mini camps to mandatory OTAs to training camp to the regular season. And there had to be a balance. The players had to fight back. You're asking us to do more, and the amount of games keeps expanding. You know, we went from 12 games as a kid to 14, 16, now 17, and they're still talking about the possibility of an 18-game schedule. That's not off the table completely yet, you know, which is great from a fan's perspective, but from a football player's perspective, you're killing these guys, man. So their way to fight back was, well, if you're not going to give us certain concessions in the next bargaining agreement, then we need to have this at least. We need to have time to heal.
Yeah.
You know, you want us to perform at our best and to cut down on all these injuries. You need to give us something in return. And, of course, when the NFL compensated, you know, when they didn't give the players the exact money they wanted, their compensation was, okay, we'll back off on your practicing. Now, I guarantee you, like you said, there's Jalen Hurts and a lot of players at which they could officially practice more, especially younger players or players making a transition from one NFL team to another to get better acclimated with the situation. But there's a lot more players that are taking advantage of this to actually get their bodies ready for what's to come. We talk about the significant increase in the injuries, but if you look at the way training camps and things are structured now, players are at least healthier mentally and physically than they've ever been,
right?
Because of how the management and ownership and coaches have been forced to back off how much they use these guys on the field.
The thought is right. Like the thought process is right. Like the intent is there for all the right reasons to not abuse these guys and to help these guys along. And, and hopefully we'll start to see the benefits of this when these guys retire and guys who are currently playing retire. They're maybe not quite as in bad health as some of the guys in the 70s and the 80s and 90s, et cetera. You hope. I mean, it's a violent game. There's only so many things you can do, but you hope so. You hope that's the case. And let me just grab this. So Game 7 situation.
Yeah.
Please get Rob and Gunner to read the chats because we actually care and support these guys. We do read the chats, guys, and we will pull up a lot of the comments. Game 7. I don't know if you're new to the show, but we absolutely read the chats, acknowledge the chats, and pull the chats up. If there's a valid question or point or something, I'll either bring it up with the guest or we'll bring it up as a show, or I'll pull up the comments. We do it all the time. So we do absolutely value the support that we get. So for whatever it's worth. So just wanted to put it out there.
Yep, absolutely. I haven't seen Game 7 before, so I'm assuming it's new to the show.
Yeah. So, but that is how we operate. We appreciate and acknowledge everybody who takes the time. hang out with us. So it's all good. But no, it was great getting his insights on that. And I think he shares a lot of the same concerns we share. What's it going to look like from a linebacking and safety perspective? I think the other parts, defensive line is going to be fine. They may not get the same number of sacks, but the defensive line is going to be fine. I think the corners are going to be fine, but it really comes down to those two positions, safety and linebacker, and how quickly they acclimate, how quickly Sean Desai puts his fingerprints on this thing and they're able to play well, because they have to play well early, with this schedule.
And I think, and we've talked about our questions about the linebacking and the safety position.
Yeah.
You don't think these better passing teams are going to try to exploit that all day long? The Kansas Cities, the Buffaloes, they're going to exploit that all day long if the Eagles don't have an answer for it.
Right.
So that is a major concern. That could be the difference between winning and losing some of those key games. And we applaud the Eagles for having a very deep and talented roster on paper. But if that is your Achilles heel, even a mediocre team is going to be a lot closer to you in game situations. We talked all season long about, as good as that defense was, teams that passed killed them over the middle of the field, whether it was a tight end, a slot receiver. Those teams were killing the Eagles in that aspect of the passing game, especially when Avonte Maddox went down. When you didn't have him in the slot covering the slot receiver, man, was that a deficiency in their pass defense. If the front seven or front four couldn't get home, it was just up and dink and dump up and down the field against this Eagles defense. And I can see more of that if they don't have a definitive answer this year for it.
Yeah, I think, look, I really believe that this offense is going to be awesome. I agree with Seth. I think they're a top 3 offense. But there's a lot of pressure on this offense early. There is. They're going to have to really come out ready to rock and roll against these teams and score a lot early, because I think the defense is going to be playing catch-up. So they're going to have to be on point right away. I think the defense will find its footing as we go, and hopefully when they hit that stretch that we're talking about out of the bye, which is really tough, they're ready to go by then. But I'm not sure they're going to be ready to go early. I think it's going to take a little bit.
I do too, because of all the new personnel, especially from a coaching structure on the defensive side. That offense has no excuse for not hitting the ground running. The only change on that offense is the right guard position. Everybody else is back, And so there's no matter how limited the practice time is for the offensive personnel, they know each other. They succeeded at a high level last year. In many cases, they were virtually unstoppable. I expect them to come out and be raring to go from day one.
I do too. I do too. I mean, think about it. Look, I'm not downplaying Isaac Seumalo, who was a nice player, but I think they'll figure that out, especially with the people around him and with the coach, the offensive line coach that they have. I think the running backs, it's a matter of staying healthy. The nice thing is you have 4 guys that you feel good about, essentially 2 guys in Boston Scott and Gainwell who are backups who are really good and capable. So I think they're going to be fine offensively. I think Devontae Smith spoke about this yesterday. I don't think it's bragging if you back it up, and I believe him. He thinks he's one of the premier wide receivers in the game, and I think he's going to be that much better because he has gotten stronger this upcoming season. I think he's going to be really good for them, and I think same thing. A.J. Brown's still 25.
Yes.
We forget how young these guys are.
Yeah. In a game like football, you have to have a certain amount of confidence, and maybe it even borderlines cockiness. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a problem one iota with Devontae Smith saying that. Look at the numbers he put up in year 2 compared to his rookie campaign.
Right.
And I expect him to be even better this year, even if he still is slight of build, even if he doesn't put on weight. He's already shown he can take the hits. He can survive the duration of a season. And I expect him having another year with Jalen Hurts to be even better this year.
Yeah.
So if he feels like he's one of the best elite pass catchers in the game, more power to him. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times football is more mental than it is physical. If you don't think you can do it physically, a lot of times you can't get it done. It starts with your mental approach to the game. And he's right where he needs to be mentally in terms of approaching another season in the National Football League.
Absolutely. So the offense should be one that is, bless you, comes out of the chute really, really strong. All right. Let's hit it. Let's come back. We'll mix in a little Sixers. So here's what we're going to do in our NFL segment at 2:00, Derek. Looking forward to this. we're going to get into quarterback storylines, meaning Russell Wilson, can he regain his form with Sean Payton? Deshaun Watson, who we hardly talk about now. What's that going to look like in Cleveland? Is Justin Fields ready to take that next step to the next level? What is Jordan Love? Will Goff and Geno Smith, for example, follow up monster years last year with good years again? We'll jump around a little bit to some of the quarterback stories around the league. Obviously, we do Hurts all the time, so we'll move on to some other guys, but we'll hit all that when we come back. So don't go anywhere. Come back a little Sixers and a little Phillies. That's Derek Gunn. I'm Rob Ellis on this beautiful Thursday. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Let's talk about Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group because, let's think about it. You work really hard and you want to be set up and taken care of the right way later in life. You want to be able to invest with someone that you trust. I trust Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group. You will too, and he will be an absolute unbelievable resource for you going forward for all the important stuff. Whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review, you might have a small business and you're, looking to get your employee benefits off the ground. That's another resource that he can help you with. I know I've entrusted my IRA, my 401k rollovers with Jim, and I couldn't be any happier. You will be too. Give him a call, 610-996-4751, 610-996-4751. You can email him as well, Murray, Murray.Jim@principal.com. That's Murray.Jim@principal.com.